Did something happen for all of you to come over so suddenly?
One day, my son Mike and his family showed up at my house without any notice. I felt gloomy again today because Mike's family always visits without considering our circumstances. However, Mike and his family seemed not to care at all. On the contrary, they demanded snacks and drinks as they pleased. I was utterly disappointed with their always selfish and rude behavior. Reluctantly, while serving coffee and snacks,
Can you leave after you're done eating? I have things to do.
I told them, but there was no response from Mike and the others. Instead, out of nowhere,
We're moving into your house next week.
they announced something unreasonable. I panicked but desperately refused.
It's impossible.
However, Mike and his family wouldn't listen at all. To make matters worse, I was shocked to hear them talking as if they planned to use me like a housekeeper. That night, feeling utterly helpless, I decided to seek help from my friends. My name is Sarah. I have been living alone in the house we lived in for many years since my husband passed away 5 years ago. We met through a mutual friend. Since we both had a good first impression of each other, after a few dates, we smoothly moved on to marriage. I thought I could build a calm and warm family with my husband, who was kind and considerate. I had such baseless confidence because I loved him so much. But after getting married, I found out he was a bit sloppy, especially concerning work. His salary as a taxi driver was performance-based. So, if he didn't carry passengers and make sales, he wouldn't earn a cent. But at the beginning of our marriage, during the peak of the bubble economy, I thought such worries were unnecessary. However, when the bubble burst, everything changed. Customers vanished all at once, leading to idle days. Naturally, our income dropped to less than half of what it used to be. In a dire situation where taxi drivers competed for passengers, my husband spent his days napping in the car. He couldn't escape the mindset of easy earnings without hardship and lacked a sense of crisis and adaptability to change. Even though there was a base salary, it was barely enough to cover the gas, let alone our living expenses. Faced with either putting in effort to increase sales or considering a career change,
We have savings, it'll get better. Just like before, it's all good.
said my husband, remaining carefree. But those days never returned, and before we knew it, he was at the bottom of the sales ranking at the taxi company. Even my husband felt embarrassed about the situation and started to panic. But that didn't change his lax work attitude. Still, being at the bottom was embarrassing. He wondered if there was a way to escape this situation while maintaining an easy work life. So, he came up with the illogical action of dipping into our savings to pretend he was making sales. When I realized this, I was truly disappointed and considered divorce. However, my husband earnestly repented, promising to work seriously from then on, so we shelved the divorce talk. Since then, though there were risky moments, he worked hard for the family. I also worked, and together, we supported our family, bought our current home, and paid off the mortgage. Even after my husband's death, I have been able to continue living not much differently than before. We had a son, Mike, our only child. Mike was shy and clingy as a child, but started to become distant after puberty, rapidly becoming estranged. That would have been fine, but around the time he started university, his behavior worsened, and he began staying out late and overnight without permission. Fortunately, he seemed to be attending university, but there was no sign of him working part-time. I was always worried about where his spending money was coming from. And my worries were confirmed. My son had been dipping into the savings we had for our old age. I confronted Mike and my husband about the savings. Then I heard something outrageous from Mike.
Dad said it was okay to use it. He said we have savings, so it's fine even if my part-time job is just whatever.
I was speechless upon hearing those words. I knew he had a careless personality from the beginning, but I never thought he would teach our child to be carefree too. On top of that, I was furious to find out that my husband had unilaterally decided to let our son use our savings. I talked to my son about repaying the entire amount. But my husband insisted that repayment was unnecessary since he had given permission to use it. In the end, we agreed to waive repayment on the condition that he earns his own spending money from now on. Looking back, I wonder if a stricter approach at that time might have led to a brighter future. With graduation just around the corner, Mike struggled with job hunting. But he ended up failing miserably and became a freeter. Even as a part-timer, there are cases where diligent work is recognized and one can become a full-time employee. I always talked to Mike about the importance of sticking to one job seriously. However, Mike would say, "I'd rather not do that kind of work," and quit almost immediately. While hopping from one part-time job to another, he met his wife, Rala. Rala was 2 years younger than Mike and was a junior in college when they met. At the time, Rala was room sharing with a friend but was worried about her future path after graduation. According to Mike, Rala had a bad relationship with her parents and did not want to return home after graduation. However, her room-sharing friend was moving out after graduation, and Rala was worried about being able to afford the rent. Mike, who had been Rala's confidant, suggested they start living together along with starting their relationship. Rala accepted, and they became a couple. The two started living together when Rala's room sharing with a friend ended. Then, about a year later, the arrival of our granddaughter, Mary, led Mike and Rala to get married. I had my concerns, but secretly hoped that marriage and having a child might make Mike more serious about work. However, Mike's carelessness towards work did not change. He did try to find employment for the sake of his child a few times, but was quickly fired due to unexcused absences and neglect of duties. Recently, he seems to be making ends meet by working in construction. Rala also works part-time at a supermarket, but she often changes jobs, possibly due to poor customer service. I also have concerns about Mary's manners and moral sense, as her behavior often lacks consideration for others. Especially when she comes over unannounced and takes snacks without permission or opens and eats gifts I bought for friends. But looking back, these incidents seem almost endearing. As a middle schooler, Mary wanted pocket money and tried to sell my late husband's keepsakes without permission. Not just once or twice. Luckily, I noticed before they were sold, but since then, I can't let my guard down for a moment when Mary is around. Moreover, my only hope, Mike would say, "Mom, you're too strict. She's a cute granddaughter, so be a bit more lenient," but offers no guidance or discipline to Mary. Mary seems to think she can do anything without repercussions with me, and her inconsiderate actions only worsened. Rala, too, finds reasons to come over, asking for food or meals to be paid for, showing no concern for manners or discipline. I tolerate it because they are my only family, but frankly, they have been nothing but a source of worry. During these troublesome days, I decided to have a mini reunion with friends I met in a university circle after many years. "It's been so long, everyone." "Oh, you became an editor-in-chief at a publishing house? As expected from our writing circle's president." "My recent life? Well, it's SOSO. How about you all?" Conversations with close friends were so enjoyable that we lost track of time. It seemed everyone had their share of hardships, but now they were living relatively peaceful lives. I felt a tiny bit envious of my friends. I thought they didn't have to deal with the rude behavior of family members like I did. However, one friend's comment took the situation in an unexpected direction. Like me, she had lost her husband and was now living alone in their house. She has 3 children who are either married or living freely, each leading their own lives. She mentioned not wanting to depend on her children but feeling anxious about her declining physical strength each year. She also wanted to sell her old and uncomfortable house, but lacked the courage and physical strength to live alone in a new environment. Though I considered moving to a nearby apartment for the elderly, it was too expensive for me to afford. I've discussed living together due to concerns about old age, but I prefer not to since I don't get along with my daughter-in-law. Then, my friends also started sharing their worries about old age and grievances with their families. Our reunion quickly turned into a life consultation session. I took this opportunity to vent about my son's family to my friends. It was comforting to know that, to some extent, we all shared similar problems. During our discussions, a friend of mine, who is a single editor, suggested, "Why don't we all live together?" According to her, there's a trend of living in shared houses where each household resides separately within one building. It allows for mutual support among friends while maintaining individual privacy, offering more privacy than traditional room sharing. She also shared information she gathered for a magazine feature, including the disadvantages of shared houses, maintenance costs, and the procedures and cost estimates for purchasing a shared house. The more we heard, the more appealing it seemed. I found myself strongly desiring a peaceful old age with my friends over being constantly disrupted by my troublesome son and his wife. This sentiment was shared among my friends. As a result, the proposer, myself, and 2 other friends, who had also lost their spouses, agreed to live in a shared house. At that time, it still felt like a dream. Though we wanted to make it happen, finding the right property seemed daunting. However, a few months after our mini-reunion, the friend who proposed the idea found the perfect property. It was a detached house with a garden in the city, offered at a bargain price because it didn't come with land ownership. We all agreed to buy it, considering the land could lead to future disputes. The purchase went smoothly, and all that was left was for each of us to sort out our personal affairs before moving in. I was eagerly preparing for the move when Mary unexpectedly showed up at my house one day. Worried that she might complicate things if she found out about the move, I acted as if nothing was amiss and busied myself with chores until she left. "Okay, I'm heading back now." Mary left in unusually high spirits that day, which left me feeling a mix of fear and anxiety. I feared she might have taken something valuable, so I checked around the house but found nothing missing. Even after checking my wallet, everything was in order. Was it all in my head? I thought, feeling relieved for a moment, until my son and his family's visit the next day proved my intuition right. "Did something happen for all of you to come over so suddenly?" I was deeply disappointed by my son's family showing up unannounced again. But they seemed not to care at all and demanded coffee and snacks as usual. Thinking they were here to save on meal expenses, I served some snacks and drinks and said, "I have things to do, so could you leave after eating?" However, they didn't react. Instead, out of the blue, "We're moving into your house next week," they announced suddenly. "What? Moving here? Next week? That's impossible." I was confused by the abrupt development. Then Mary revealed the shared house brochure she had taken without permission. "This is what we talked about yesterday. It's a really nice house, right?" That is. Only then did I understand the meaning behind their sudden actions. I tried to argue against it, but the 3 of them wouldn't listen. Instead, "Living with us would be better than you being alone at your age, right? You'll be happy living with cute Mary and Sarah." "Right. We're being so filial. I'll take the best room. Grandma only needs to do the chores and laundry, so you don't need a room, right? From next week, you'll take care of everything, so it'll be super easy for us," they said. Their words were shocking, but what shocked me the most was that my granddaughter only saw me as a housekeeper. Afterward, my son's family, claiming it was a punishment for keeping important matters from them, cheerfully left after collecting money for meals from me. That day, I forgot about my chores and meals, consumed by thoughts of how to stop the move. But I couldn't come up with any good ideas. Desperate, I decided to invite my friends over to discuss the matter. The next day, despite the sudden invitation, all members of the shared house gathered at my place. So that's the situation. It's embarrassing to admit, but I'm at my wit's end on my own. It was hard for me to expose my family's shame, but thank you for sharing. My friends responded with open hearts. They condemned my unreasonable son and his family and suggested that I should hurry up with the move to the shared house as soon as possible. They also said they would help me with all their might. Thank you all so much. Friends really are the treasure one should have. The next day, I hurriedly prepared for the move. Since the shared house came with necessary appliances and furniture, my belongings only amounted to about 3 boxes. Thanks to that, I was able to move into the shared house just 3 days after discussing it with my friends. I also arranged for the sale and disposal of unwanted items concurrently with the move preparations. Emptying the house meant I wouldn't have to return to my old home ever again. I was relieved to no longer worry about accidentally meeting Mike's family. This rapid response was possible thanks to my friends' support. Not only did they help with the move preparation, but their families and acquaintances took care of carrying the belongings and dealing with the junk dealers. Even friends who weren't moving into the shared house offered their help. At that moment, I deeply appreciated having met these friends. Having moved in early, I spent my days cleaning the shared house and organizing supplies, expressing my gratitude to my friends, including those who helped but weren't moving in. In the evenings, I would sit in the communal area, sipping coffee and pondering life with the friends I'd be living with. I can't wait to live with everyone. It was a peaceful and fulfilling time every day. Then, one day, I found a barrage of missed calls from my daughter-in-law, Rala, on my mobile phone. I had left my phone at home that day and went out shopping. That's right, it was today. Remembering the reason for Rala's calls as I looked at the date displayed on my phone screen. She called again. Hello? Sarah? Why aren't you answering your phone? What's this all about? I don't understand. Over the phone, Rala sounded panicked, barely able to say anything besides expressing her confusion. Put me on speaker. What's going on here? Explain yourself properly. Mike, cutting into the conversation, was yelling with an almost crazed intensity. Imagining their faces, I couldn't help but laugh. Have you figured it out yet? What are you laughing at? Explain now. Where did our house go? Your house? I had it demolished the other day. What? You're kidding, right? Why? Well, I was planning to sell the house and land from the start. That's why I said we couldn't live together. Mike fell silent at that. In fact, the family home had already been demolished and the site cleared. When I emptied the house and moved into the shared house, a friend who helped me move asked, "What will you do with the house?" I'm thinking of consulting with a real estate agent to decide what to do. I replied, but my friend suggested demolishing it right away. The reason was, again, my son's family's unreasonable behavior. My friend thought that even if I wasn't there, the family might just move in if the house was left standing, creating obstacles if I ever wanted to sell the property. To prevent this, the best course of action was to demolish it immediately. Moreover, this friend's husband also did demolition work and could start as early as the next day. Having received a considerable sum from selling the unwanted items, I immediately agreed to my friend's proposal and decided to have the family home demolished. This is how I managed to teach my selfish and unreasonable son's family a lesson. What do you mean you were planning to sell? What about us? That's right! We've already terminated our apartment lease. Where are we supposed to live now? That's not my problem.
Talk to the landlord and maybe you can move back into the apartment. That's impossible, you know? I don't want to go back. Everyone avoids me at the previous place, and I'm banned from all the shops there. I was inwardly shocked at Mary's comment. It seems her self-centered behavior wasn't just limited to my home. Summarizing Mary's complaints, it appears she had been repeating her selfish actions at friends' homes and restaurants. Though she showed no remorse or awareness of her actions as nuisances, she felt alienated due to the cold reactions from those around her. At a time when moving to our home and transferring schools presented an unwelcome restart for Mary, she expressed a strong desire never to return to her previous home or school. Similarly, my daughter-in-law Rala shared her reasons for not being able to return to our previous home. It seems Rala often caused financial troubles at the supermarkets around the apartment. Not only as an employee but also as a customer, leading to her being banned from entering, just like Mary. She complained about having to use more expensive online supermarkets or travel to the next town for shopping. Although she mentioned the apartment lease was terminated, it turned out they were nearly evicted due to continuous rent arrears. The more I heard, the more speechless I became at their pitiful tales. Why would you sell the house if you were just going to renovate it? That's not what we agreed on. Renovate? Who said anything about renovating? Mary did. When I heard the discussion, I assumed you were turning it into a home with rental units. That would mean it's only right for us, your family, to live there. But selling it? That really makes no sense. Oh, that's what this was about. I thought something was off. This conversation with Mike finally cleared up my confusion. At the same time, it made me painfully aware of my son's family's selfishness, prompting me. Figure it out yourselves from here. Before hanging up the phone. This would finally sever my ties with them. I felt a wave of relief, as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. However, a few days later, Mike and his family unexpectedly showed up at the shared house, having somehow found out where it was. Thinking I shouldn't let them in, I locked all the doors and resisted desperately. Open up. Since Mom's the reason we don't have a house, you need to give us this one. Besides, it's a waste for the elderly to have such a nice house. Mike and his family made threatening gestures, ringing the doorbell repeatedly and banging on the door. My hands trembling, I managed to call the police. When the police arrived at the shared house a few minutes later, Mike and his family fled. I managed to get through today, but I was sure they would return tomorrow. With this thought, I reported the incident to my friends. Two of them mentioned having family members who are police officers, firefighters, and self-defense forces personnel and offered to consult them. From the next day, a police officer from the nearby station started checking on the shared house. Additionally, following one friend's early move-in, men from the fire brigade and self-defense forces began patrolling the area and offering security advice. When Mike and his family showed up again, they left without saying a word upon seeing the men. After that, we never saw Mike and his family again. Originally, Mike and his family had planned to take over the shared house before my friends moved in. However, they were unable to execute their plan because of the daily visits by the physically imposing men and the police officer. Moreover, Mike and his family's funds quickly depleted from staying in hotels. As they were scouting the shared house daily for an opportunity to take over, without working, they eventually ran out of money. Desperate, Mike and his family sought help from a homeless service center. The only option presented to them was to move into the only available public housing, which was too small for a family and poorly located. Despite the undesirable conditions, they had no money nor other place to live. Furthermore, they risked losing even that option if another applicant showed up. Stuck without any forward or backward path, Mike's family reluctantly decided to move into the public housing. Although the rent was cheap, everything else required money.
Mike and his family, who had depended on my money and food without seriously working, never saw their situation improve. Moreover, the distance from the middle school meant Mary had to catch an early morning bus to make it to class on time. Unable to cope with such a difficult life, Mary became a problem child, repeatedly skipping school and running away from home. Meanwhile, in the shared house, the remaining 2 friends moved in, and we began our long-awaited life together as 4. The incident with my son's family brought us closer, making our subsequent life surprisingly smooth and comfortable. Living with these reliable friends who helped me through a crisis in my life became my greatest support. The shared space allowed us to invite friends who didn't live with us for tea parties, weekend drinks, and travel planning, making our lives even more enjoyable. The absence of stress from my son's family even gave me the leisure to start writing novels again. This year, I turned 65. My life, though not unhappy, had been dominated by my husband and son. But now, I can spend my money and time on myself and the friends I live with. Thus, I converted all my inheritance into cash. I plan to use it freely, excluding my savings for old age, and live a carefree life.